I'm Maureen Carlson from Maureen Carlson's Center for Creative Arts and We Folk Creations. I'm here at my play shop with some of my characters, and these are all made from one of the We Folk Creation What a Character push molds. And they're specifically made with push molds F3, F4, and F5. Those particular push molds are a pink silicone rubber. It's a very high-grade silicone rubber made to last approximately 10 years without degrading. And they're flexible, as you can see. And this flexibility allows me to make different sizes of faces, and then I get to play with the clay to even make them more different from each other. Now, the clay that I'll be using in this video is polymer clay, though you could use one of the other clays to create these characters, like a paper clay or an air dry clay, or even a vegetable-based, flour-based clay that you make yourself in your own kitchen. So we hope you'll have fun, and I'm going to be right back to show you how these three molds make all of these different characters. These characters are all made with What a Character mold F3. These lively fellows are What a Character mold F4. And these four whimsical souls are all made with What a Character mold F5. People are always asking us, what size of a character can you make from a 3-inch head mold? Well, you know, it depends. If you're a person that likes a black and white answer, like one way is the correct way, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of an answer for you, because it depends on how many heads tall you want your character to be. Now, what does that mean? Well, let me use this little head here. This is mold F4. It's very similar to this little face because it's made from the same mold. Let's see how many heads tall this little guy is. Oh, there's a little bit of fuzz from my fiberfill. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, about 4 heads tall. So 3 times 4 is 12 inches. He's about 12 inches tall. This character I've already measured, and he is 15 inches tall, or 15 divided by 3 is approximately 5 heads tall. Now this is approximate because if you look at my mold, it's not exactly 3 inches. When you're working with soft clay, every time you make it, you can sort of squeeze it a little, as we'll see in just a bit, to make it either bigger or smaller, depending on what you do with the clay. And then this character over here is 16 inches tall, so he's a little bit closer to 5½ heads, or 5 1/3 heads tall. Now, the average person is between 7 and 8 heads tall. So if you wanted to make these into like very, very realistic average sized persons, you might want to go all the way to 3 times 8 or 3 times 7, which would be 21 inches, which would be about up to here. So, well, this little guy here, we forgot him. He is only 10 inches tall, so he's just a little bit more than 3 heads tall. So all of these will work for this mold, depending on what kind of character you want to make. Now, I like to make a lot of elves and trolls and fairies and gnomes and Santa Clauses, and those are usually more like 4 to 6 heads tall. So you've just lots of choices here. One of the questions we get is, what kind of clay should we use for these character molds? And you can use a lot of different kinds. I'm using polymer clay. Specifically, I'm using Living Doll, which is made by Polyform. Another version that they have is their Primo Sculpey, but Fimo Classic, Fimo Soft, Kato Clay, Cernet, those would all be good polymer clay to use for these push molds. And of course, there's also the air dry clays like we talked about before, and the paper clays and the clays that you make yourself. But if you're using polymer clay, usually it comes in 2 ounce or 57 gram packages, and you need approximately 3 ounces or almost 90 grams for a head, give or take, because some heads will be big and some heads will be small. This head is certainly going to take more clay than this one does. This one takes about 3 ounces or 90 grams. For sculpting an original face, I like to use hard clay, but for these molds, these face molds particularly, I like a relatively soft clay. Got it well conditioned. I'm going to take my hands and put them in a V shape and make a slight cone. And then I'm going to flatten the edges of this. So I've got my hands like this, and I'm flattening these edges so it's a little bit close to the shape of the mold itself. And I'm going to take that point. You see what that looks like? It looks kind of like a big candy kiss. I'm going to stick that right into the nose, and then I'm going to push in. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get some arthritis in that thumb, so I like to use a big tool. This is just a rounded dowel. I can push this in and do most of the work with this dowel, and it's a little easier on my hand. I'm pushing that in pretty hard because I want to fill all the cavities. And you notice I did not put any powder in the mold because the silicone rubber releases really easily from polymer clay. Over a period of time, if you use them a lot, you may decide you need to wash them. They may start to get sticky, and of course that also depends on what material you're using. Now I'm using my thumb at the last part here because I can tell where there's some cavities where it hasn't really gone into all of the mold. Now notice that it's concave in the back. There's no reason to fill this all the way up. Now I'm going to carefully loosen this all the way around. I don't want the clay to shift because if it does, I might get 3 noses or 2 eyes or 4 eyelids or 2 sets of lips. I'm going to gently pull this out, and I'm going to try to come straight out. So now we have this face. It's pretty good. This is mold F3. Now look what I can do. I can leave it just like that and not do anything to it because I have lots of character and detail into it. Or I can pick up some of my tools and start to make some changes. And this is where it gets to be fun. The key here is to have fun, because what's the worst thing that can happen if you don't like it, and if you accidentally go too far, or oh, that's not good, oh, I hate that, oh, I hate that, oh, you know what you can do? You can put it in a ball and start all over. And what have you wasted? Nothing. You just had a little bit of fun. So let me get this in a ball again, and I'll be right back. So I've made the face again. It looks just like it did the last time. I'm going to see, okay, where should we make some changes? Well, if you're new to sculpting, the safest thing to do is just stay on the lines that are already there, but deepen them. So I've got here a number, I think maybe it's a 4 or 6, 7, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a knitting needle. I've got this knitting needle. I deepen the lines around the nose. Now I'm going to go in there, clean out his nose, and then I'm going to come right here at the base of the nostrils and pull those, just sort of drag that around the corner a little bit so that goes up into his nostril a little. So now we have that look. Let's deepen the corners of the mouth. And let's take a smaller tool, here's a needle tool, and just accentuate some of these marks that are under the eyes, little crow's feet. This is a little bit like scoring paper, where you draw a line into the paper, and then when you fold the paper or bend it, it will try to bend on those lines that you've deepened. The clay will do that as well, because that's what we're going to do next. Look, I can take my hands like this and support it on both sides. I'm going to push it up, but gently. I'm going to push it that way, push it that way, push it a little more. We can stretch it this way. Look how many different faces you can get just by playing around with that. You can go like this. Now how about, let's take this knife, and this is a kind of a dull paring knife that I've been using for 30 years. It's one of my favorite tools. I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut in from that corner, and then cut in from this corner. So now we have a little bit more opening of the mouth. I'm going to come in with my knitting needle pull that down a little, and we're going to go like that. Now I wrecked my bottom lip a little bit, but that's okay because we're going to close this back up. Now we have that look. Let's try this look. Let's take my thumb and I'm going to pull this lip down a little. Come up again. Now we have this. Now we have this. Now we have this. Now we have that. Now I'm not loving what I did with that mouth right there. So what I might do is just pull the upper part of the lip down a little, go from the back side and pull this open. See how you can just keep playing with it? Now I'm going to take a brush and smooth out this area right there that when I stretched it, it started to look a little bit manipulated. So this pretty good quality smooth brush I'm going to use to move the clay around with a little. I think I'm going to come back and make this into a funny face. Funny or sad. Well, let's see. I think he's getting kind of sad. Let's pull his nose down. There we go. Now we have this. Now I'm going to do something to those eyes. An easy thing to do if you don't want to do a lot of painting is to take a tool that has a flat end. Can you see that flat end there? And I'm going to take this, I'm going to open his eyes a little bit so that I can get in there without wrecking his eyelids. And I'm going to come right in there and push straight in and come right here and push straight in at the same angle. And then take a sharp needle tool and make a hole in the middle. Look at all of a sudden he's got some soul there because he can see. Now once I've baked this, I can just leave his eyes like that, and I don't even have to paint them if I don't want to, though we can use a lot of different painting tricks to add more detail into those eyes, and I'm going to show that in a little bit. I'm adding a little more definition to that lip because I wrecked it the first time. And we're going to do a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. Now we have this character. Very different from our first face. Now I'm going to take the scissors. I'm going to cut this off all the way around because this particular one I'm going to bake like a mask, and after it's hardened, because polymer clay has to be baked, after it's hardened I can then put it over an existing armature, like a fabric armature or a wire armature or a wooden stick. So what you do is you manipulate until you get the head just the way you want it, and then this is what it looks like in the back. I can also smooth this if I want to. Once you have it the way you want it, you're going to lay it on a surface and bake it and harden it. So this is one that was done that way. This was done with mold F5, this one here. And see how, oh, it's got some tape there on the back that I used for something else. This has already been hardened, and I can now drill holes into it if I want to and sew it onto an armature base, or use a good quality epoxy glue or some really sturdy glue to glue it on, though I prefer to sew things on or wire things on with little holes that I would drill in along the sides. Now I'd like to show you how to use this mold to make a whole head, both the front and the back. There are many ways to do the same thing, but this is one way. I'm going to start with a piece of wire. This is 14 gauge fence wire, though you could use a coat hanger if that's what you have. If you have a coat hanger that's not the real hard one, but kind of a medium one that you can still bend with your hands. So I formed a loop up here at the top. Now we're going to take foil, and I'm going to wrap foil and stick it through the center here. Wrap this around really tightly and push it into that center so it's in there. And basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to come up with the shape that will fit that hole. So that's how big it needs to be. Now if you have a smaller hole, you obviously would need a smaller piece of foil for this inside. And I'm just going to keep wrapping this around till it's approximately that shape. one of the things you want to be careful of is that you get enough support right here where the chin will be, or you might have your little character lose its chin because it's going to try to, the clay is going to try to push and fill up any cavity space that's between the foil and the clay itself. So let's just try this out. See, ooh, not big enough yet. Let me keep wrapping and I'll be right back. So I have this piece of foil on the wire that looks pretty much like it will fit that face, but it's not all fastened together. So now that I have the right size, I'm going to take just another single layer of foil and wrap around that to hold it in place. And then I'm going to roll it on the table to smooth it up a little bit, because we don't want knobs of foil to be coming through the head, though that might be interesting. So now we have that. Doesn't really look too head-shaped, but that's okay. Now we're going to take another piece of clay that was left over from making the mold, making the face. I'm going to take this and I'm going to cover up the back of the foil. So this is on the back side, and I try to keep the clay about 1/4 of an inch thick. So I'm pushing that on, and I'm going to bend these legs so this will be like little support legs for this head so it can stand up on its own. There we go. So I'm using the palm of my hand to push that in place. Now this clay is coming down here and it's going to interfere with the evenness of the mold, so I'm going to cut that off. There we go. This is pretty good. Now it looks like that. Now we're going to take this and fit this on. There, see how that's fitting on there? And then we're going to push these together. Looks like I could have maybe used a little more clay there, but I think it will be okay. Push that all down. Push this together. Whoops, we're missing a little bit right here. So I'm going to take a little piece of clay right there and fill that in. It's very forgiving. Now I'm holding this a little bit like a hot potato, because if I squeeze too hard in any one place, I'm going to push the face out of shape. I'm going to stitch this together just by taking the knitting needle or any other sort of blunt rounded tool and disrupting that edge, and then laying my finger on there and getting that warm so that that starts to blend together. And I would do it that way all the way around the seam. Sometimes it also helps to go like this and just hold that in your hands, rock that a little bit. And the warmth of your hands will start to blend that together. And I'll shape the head the same way with the palm of my hand, sort of pushing and rocking and rolling. This side's pretty good. I'll finish that side later. You don't need to see me do that. You got the idea. Now, what are we going to do with this head? How are we going to change this one? This is mold F5. Let me do a couple of different things on this one that we didn't do on the first face that we did. I'm going to use this tool and I'm going to poke out the eye. Ouch! Oh, there we go. And I want to be careful not to disrupt the eyelid itself too much. Looks like I got that one a little bit deep. We'll see if this is going to work. I'm going to drop in a couple of white jade beads. Drop those in there so that they're deeper than the eyelids. This one, let's see, I'll look at it this way and I'll look at it this way to see if they're similar. I think I need to open up this part of this eye a little bit. There we go, there we go, there we go. Not too bad. Now what happens when I go like this, go like that? Oh he's looking a little sad, but remember, we're playing. We can always do it over if we don't like it. There we go, there we go, there we go, there we go. Oh, so sad. Now, I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just going to brush that in there a little bit because I've got a little bit of a glitch. See how that cleaned up that clay? Now we're going to deepen this. Ooh, he's got bad bags. Whoops. Deepen that, deepen that. Now, is this the only way to do this? No, you can make hundreds of different faces with this one mold. I'm going to deepen this area here like we did before, but this time I'm really going to exaggerate it, bring those nostrils up. And we're going to go like this, and we're going to go like that. And see, I'm still staying on the lines of the mold. I'm not making new lines for the most part. Now let's see what happens if we go like that. If we go like this. If we go like this. We go like that. If we go like that. If we go like this. Bring this up. Bring this up. Bring that up. Let's bring that down. Ooh, a little bit like that. And the profile looks like this. So we see what we're doing. We just keep playing with it until we go, yes, we like it, or no, we don't. Let's do it over. So what's the vote on this one? Everybody vote out there. I won't tell you what the results are. Maybe you'll see this one again, and maybe you won't. This is mold F4, and we're going to do some of the same things we did to the last little guy, and this time I'm going to flatten his nose this way. I want to show another way to do the eyes. This is a drinking straw, and it's kind of a small one. I think it's a stir stick from one of the fast food places. I can take this and push it into the eye, take it here and push it into the eye. See, this gives me a ring around the eye, around the iris, which is kind of cool when you paint it. Now I want these to be in the same depth, so I'm maneuvering those a little. He's looking a little bit, maybe I got him a little bit cross-eyed, we'll see. Now I'm going to take a knitting needle with a little point and make a hole in the middle. Make a hole in the middle. See how it gives you that distinct ring? I think that's kind of cool. Now I'm going to open up this lip a little bit by pulling it that way. And right here I'm going to take my thumb and pull the flesh up a little bit. I'm sort of doing a beveling up there on those lips. We're going to push that up. I'm going to push that. I'm going to push that up a little bit. See how we changed his looks there? Now let's close up his eyelids a little bit. And whoops, he got a little bit mad there, and which is okay, but right now I don't want him mad, so I'm going to open up that eyebrow area a little so he doesn't look mad. And let's make a smile line right there. Now, a lot of times when I'm working, I actually look in the mirror and I make faces at myself to give myself a feeling where the parts of the face crease. So there we go, we've gotten there. And I could do lots more, but I'm going to stop, except he needs ears. And so let me get some ear parts ready. Those are also in the molds, but let me show you a little bit about the jawline. The jawline goes about like that, about halfway, half line of the face, and it goes there. I would do that on both sides so that they match. You can kind of look upside down and see how it's doing. It's getting a lot of double chin area going here, which is fine. Now notice I don't have a neck here yet either. I usually add that after I decide how I'm going to use the character, because I want that neck to be able to bend, that wire be able to bend, so it will give him certain personality depending on how he tilts his head. And I want to wait until I know how I'm using that before I block that in with clay that gets hard and doesn't move. So we're going to sit him right there just to observe for a minute. There we go, while I roll some little balls for ears. Now, there are 3 of these molds that are the 3-inch molds, and each of the ears is a little different size depending on the mold. You can use any of the 3. They are interchangeable, but I'm rolling a little teardrop shape. I'm going to push it into the mold. Oh, you can see it's too big because it's running over the mold. So I'm going to take that out, make a smaller ball, and we'll do the same thing for the other side because we want those to match. Try this again and see if this one fits better than the other one. Yes, it does. So you're going to push that into the mold, and then you go all the way around and push into the mold so that you have an edge all the way around the mold. That little piece of white, whatever got picked up there, isn't going to hurt anything. We'll just leave that there. Take another piece of clay, and I'm going to pull this ear out of the mold. So there's that ear. And we'll repeat on the other side. Push all the clay back into the mold. Pop that one out. So now we have 2 ears. We're going to find the line of the head right there. Just a minute, this is bothering me. I'm going to get rid of some of this. There we go. See how that changes his profile to get some of that clay pulled down there? There we go. So that ear is stuck right there, kind of between the nose and the top of the eye. And we'll put this one right there, between the nose and the top of the eye. Well, let me just make a little indentation there so it doesn't stick out so far from the head. There we go, right there. So there, the ears look like they're pretty good place. I'm going to hold it like this so I don't wreck the head. And take a tool and push that ear in. This clay is getting so soft because we're under lights here, and I've been using this clay, the same clay, over and over to make each of these faces, and it's really getting soft. But see, there's that ear, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Sort of stitch that seam, and then sort of roll that in place. Hold my finger on it to help it sort of blend together. Now, you can change the positioning of these ears easily. In the back, you can come along with your tool and just sort of roll that into place a little bit so that those are on there. There we go. Usually your hair will cover up that back part, but you want to be sure those ears are on there. They're not going to fall off. So here's another version of a character from mold F4. Well, now we've made some faces, but what are we going to do with them? This first row right here, this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, are just different colors of clay. So you can put any color that you want, of course, into these molds. This second row over here, these have all been painted some to give a little bit more variation to the skin colors. Of course, you could do these blue, green, whatever color you wanted, but let's take a look at just adding a little bit of detail to the faces. Ready? First thing we're going to do is gather our painting supplies. I'm using acrylic paint, and I'm painting, my heads are all polymer clay, so I like to use acrylic paint. Some people use the Genesis Artist colors. Some people use oil paints. Once in a while, you can even find people that will use watercolors, but you have to be very careful to seal those. But today we're using acrylic. And I have several colors of brown, a white, several colors of pinks or fleshes, I have black, and a gel medium that's used to extend the drying time and also to add a little translucency. Now, the brand of paint I'm not so particular on, but I do pay attention to whether I'm using the tube paints or the bottle paints. The tube paints are thicker. Usually I'll blend them with a little bit of water if I use those. These can be used directly, these bottle ones can be used directly from the bottle. So it's kind of a preference of how you like to paint. You can play around with those and see what works for you, but this is what I'm using today. As for brushes, I find one brush that has a tiny little nib on it, almost nothing at the end, and then a little bit larger liner brush, and then a couple of larger, really soft brushes. The bristles are splayed on this one, but it's still very soft. I'm going to use this to get the paint down into all of the grooves of the face. And then you need some paper towel for cleanup and wiping off. You need something to mix your paints on, and you need a water container. Once you have all of those, we're ready to go. These two faces started out as pretty much the same color, but this one has a coat of paint on it already. Let me show you how I do that. I'm choosing a color that's just slightly darker than the clay color itself is, and I'm brushing it in, paying attention to get into all of the grooves, and I work very quickly. We're going to brush that all in there, getting down in the nostrils, getting all of the grooves, and then we're going to wipe it all off. I haven't finished this because I don't want to take the time on this video, but before it dries, I'm going to just take this and wipe it all off. And I'm not wiping really, really hard. I'm wiping a little bit gently. You see I've got a lot of it off, but then I have some that's left down here really globby in the eye holes and things. This is where I take the second brush, and I'm going to go down and pull that out of all those spots and feather that out onto the skin. Then I'm going to gently wipe that surface again. So I can't really see what this looks like upside down, but that's the general idea. Then I'll show you a finished one. Now I have some the pinkish color mixed with a little bit of the gel medium. I've got those blended together. And I'm going to take a brush and we're going to put a little bit on his cheeks. Now it looks too pink right now, so I'm going to wipe that off and then just sort of pat that to soften that color. Sort of blend it out so that there's no harsh edge. Pat that. Put a little bit on his nose and blend out the edges. So I'll just do this one side for now. And then sometimes I'll take a little brush, and if there's much lip area, I'll run a little bit right there along the lip line. And then use my finger to sort of smooth that out. Now I'll add the other cheek in a little more detail after we're off camera. These guys both have their faces colored, but this one here has some color in his eyes. And let me show you what I did there. I take some dark brown paint, and I'm not going to add some white around the eye because there's so little eye showing, but I'm just going to take this brown paint and very carefully color in the center of the eye so it has more detail, and I have to be really careful because I'm getting it up onto the eyelid itself. So if you can see that, you can see I sort of made a mess there, but then that's where I get to do a little bit of repair. I can take a brush with a little bit of water on it, very little, and I can just brush that extra paint off. And I still want to brush a little off here, but see how that gives a little bit more detail to his eye to put some brown in there? On this particular face, the eye was a little bit larger, so I was able to paint the center brown and then added a little dot of white right there and right there to represent the white highlight that's picking up the reflected light. And that's usually just above and to the one side of the pupil and exactly the same on the other side. This one I decided to paint the eye white. This side is already done. I'm just taking the paint and I'm basically covering just the eyeball. You can see I don't have it done on that side. Then I'm going to take a brown color and I'm going to paint in just the center. I'm going to keep it as round as I can, staying within the indentation. And I am never very quick at painting eyes because I feel like if I get it just a little bit off, it changes the looks of the whole piece. So I'm very, very careful painting eyes. It takes me a long time, and a lot of the characters in my studio never get their eyes done because I keep putting it off. Now this isn't totally round yet, so off camera I'll fix that a little bit. But just you see how making that, well, let me go off camera and fix that a minute. I'll be right back. You're going to have a little bit that's smeared over onto the eyelid. This is easy to fix by taking some paint that's almost the same color as the skin tone and just coming back in and carefully running that along the eyelid to repair any little spots. These two faces have eyeballs that are smooth with no indentation, so I'm going to paint those a little bit differently. This one is completed, so we'll lay him down. It started like this. First of all, I painted in the white, just being very careful. Then I went back and cleaned up the edge of the eyelid with a flesh tone of paint. Then in the center of the eye, first of all, what I did is draw in where I think I want the iris to be, and I can see those aren't exactly the same size, but that's the concept. I would add this one, add a little bit more there. Then I would come back with some color of paint, whatever I want the iris to be, and first of all I'm going to outline the eye, trying to stay within those lines that I made. So let's pretend that's all done, and I'm going to finish that in very carefully, and then I'm going to pull all the paint towards the center. So this one is already done. See how it's a little bit lighter in the middle? Because I pulled from the outside into the middle. Then we're going to take some black paint, and I'm going to load my brush with a little bit of liquidy black paint and just try to dot that in the middle and see if it's big enough for a pupil. If it's not, I'll add just another touch of black paint to that. But that one looks pretty good to me. Oh, maybe it needs to be a little bit bigger. Well, let me just touch that again and see if I can keep it completely circular. We don't want that to be jagged. Fair, but you get the idea there. Now I can come back and line the eyelid, if I like, here and here with a little bit of darker paint to create like eyelash area. And then I can add in some eyebrows. For the eyebrows, I'm going to take my tiny little brush. I'm going to take just a little bit of paint on it. And let's see, does the camera get it if I paint it right here? And I'm going to just have just a little bit of paint on the brush, and I'm going to touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift. Whoops, got a little bit too much, but if you do it right away, you can wipe that off, and let's try it again. I'm going to try it up here so you can see it right there. Touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift. We want it just to sort of almost look like individual little hairs going out. See that there? We're going to do that wherever we want the eyebrow to be. This one is finished. And then in the center of the eye, once that black paint is dried, we're going to add that little touch of white for the eye, for the highlight. Now notice also on this face that we have a little bit of a darker pinkish color for the lips. And that one shows a little bit more than the first one that we did. But now let's switch to a different color. On the close-up of these darker brown faces, we see that the principle is the same. We started with the clay color, which is this one. And then I've added some dark burnt umber paint, I think is what I used on this, and wiped it off. And then added the cheek color and the lip color. And then painted the eyes just like just like we did the other ones. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this videotape. And if you get a chance to try the molds F3, F4, and F5, hope you remember to play and have fun. It's all about experimenting to see what happens. So these little guys are about ready to say goodbye, except they want to tell you a little bit about their hands because we have one more mold in this series. It's mold F6. It's a two-part mold, and it makes hands that are this size and maybe even a little bit smaller. You can see that these are just sort of propped onto here to give you an idea of what they look like, but come back. Thanks. Thanks for watching.